So Ari, congratulations on the new pamphlet.
Thank you.
Yes, I know you've been going through quite a few of these, and maybe you just talk about your inspiration for this series that you've been doing.
I was just thinking, walking over here. So a year ago, last week, I was running every day, and I had missed one day in 10 years.
A year ago.
A year ago last week. And then in the last year, I have 36 doctors and no explanation for what the fuck is going on with my foot. And I haven't run since July. So in the context of democracy, you just don't know. And I'm going to get it figured out, and we're going to get democracy going. But it just was metaphorically, it was just metaphorically a good match. So anyway, I know most of you anyway. Thank you for coming. Thanks for hosting us out here in this lovely space. And I guess the question you asked was about pamphlets. So I came here from Chicago. Many of you know I studied Russian history. I studied anarchism. They don't promote it a lot when they're doing development for U of M, but U of M has the largest anarchist collection in the country. It's on the 7th and now 8th floor of the Graduate Library. It doesn't quite raise as much money as the skyboxes at the stadium, but it is there. And I used to go. I've actually been there way more times than I've been to the stadium, just for what it's worth. So, back in 1900, really pamphlets were social media. So people act like social media is a new thing, and in a way, the speed of it is a new thing. But the idea of conveying information from person to person directly is hardly new. It's been around as long as there's been human beings. So in 1900 and 1880, 1920, for a nickel or whatever, you bought a pamphlet about a particular subject that you were interested in, and you could afford it and you could give it to your friends. And that's how information and ideas passed around. And so I like them. I mean, I write big books, obviously, too. But there's something cool about the pamphlet to me that is appealing. And then, as I always say, it's lighter than the e-reader. And it's always charged up.
Sorry, tell the origin of the series on democracy. And,
well, the democracy, I mean, people sometimes ask, like, why did you write it? I'm like... Like, there's some things you could ask me why I wrote it. It would be a good question. This one, I don't know what I mean, you're here. I mean, honestly, I mean, the story's in the pamphlet. These are strange times. You don't need me to tell you that. Henry Giroux, who's originally from Rhode Island, teaches in Canada, McMaster, I think. He wrote not long ago, he wrote, "Americans have forgotten what democracy is about." I, for one, am guilty of what Professor Giroux has posited. In some ways, despite having graduated with a degree in Russian history, I now find myself wondering if I ever truly understood democracy at all. And in a lot of ways, having done 2 years or 3 years of reflection and writing now, I don't think that I really did. And I think that much of the country, we know the name, but I don't think, maybe you all did, and I was the only one that was clueless, but I think many people really don't understand what it is. And so the pamphlet is really my exploration of what it is. And I am a history major, and I, as we started to get deeper and deeper into this hole, or whatever you want to call it, I just was like, I don't want to be one of those people in 10 years that was like, I should have done something. And, one pamphlet's not going to change the world, and it's not going to turn the country upside down, but it's something. And if everybody does something, good things start to happen. And so this was my attempt to make a difference, both in our organization, for myself, for the community, for the country. And you don't know. And so this is really just my own learnings about it. And I learned a lot. There's very little that I knew before this that's in here, before I worked on it. I will say up front, this is not about politics. It's an apolitical pamphlet. It's about people. It's about a positive belief in people. Mike just read it, but I write at E-News every week. And I wrote last week about democracy is punk rock, with a lot of quotes from Joe Strummer. And because it's just really the realization that it's, we have this image of, or many of us, I'll speak for myself, this image of politics is like these, many men, now some women, wearing fancy suits, going on TV, raising gazillions of dollars, running for office. We vote, then we go home, hope for the best, it doesn't happen, go back and do it again. And this is really an entire shift, which is that democracy starts with us every day, that democracy starts with what we do in our organization at work every day, and that instead of thinking top down like you have a democratic government, so now Orban's gone and Peter Magyar is president, so that's great in Hungary, but the democracy starts when you have schools run democratically, when you have businesses run democratically, when you have nonprofits run democratically, when people learn dignity when they're sick, then you don't end up with autocratic governments. And so that the burden shifts really onto us. And there's a plethora of things I could go through, but I'm going to pause and see if you want to. I can keep talking or ask some questions.
I think back, it's 250 years since our government was formed. And in high school, outside of Detroit, we really studied this. And I remember being very patriotic, especially when John F. Kennedy came to office and followed him. And, I was 14, I think. And people watched his news conference. And it just were inspired and started the Peace Corps. And I was very proud to be an American.
Dan Arbery's there.
Yeah, it started on he announced it on the steps of the Union, and I think in 1962, something like that. I heard Lyndon Johnson at the University of Michigan Stadium. There were probably 100,000 people. I came from high school, bussed in, and we heard him talk about the war on poverty. And he outlined what he was going to do to try to eliminate poverty in this country. So that patriotism has been tested, starting with the Vietnam War, continuing with war after war, and creating this disengagement for me. And I'm inspired to hear, be involved. And I think we don't know how much more to be involved than I'm going to get on the phones, or I'm going to go door to door, or I'm going to give some money. And I am very inspired that you wrote a book about it. Tell me how you were. What's the call for this book? Is there any? I know you're not a preacher, but is there a call out to people?
Well, it's not really about countries. I'm an anarchist, so you can apply it patriotically or not. But I think that it's what Stash Kazmierski, who taught us, some of you knew, who taught us the visioning, would call fractals. So like broccoli or cauliflower, right? So it's exactly the same. Lisa's back there, who's the managing partner at the Roadhouse. It's the same work at the Roadhouse as it is running the state of Michigan. It's the same work, running a primary school as running a giant university. And the epilogue of the democracy pamphlet is, after all of these essays that I wrote in there, was realizing that what I came to believe that what I had written in the previous pamphlet, which is on dignity, that when you practice dignity the way that I wrote about it, and when you design all of your systems and structures around dignity, that's democracy. And I can get into what the 6 elements of dignity that I came up with, but I really believe that's what it is. And a big piece of what drew me to anarchism all those years ago is that it's not a political program. It's a way to treat people. And the classic line is Howard Ehrlich, who was a anarchist from Baltimore, who under a pseudonym wrote a book about bread. Just shows you where your priorities can be reversed. But anyway, he in one of his essays, actually from the year we opened, from 1982, he said, "Who will make the anarchist revolution?" And then he self-answered, "We will, you and me, right now, every day." And so it's really just that you treat the next person you deal with dignity, that you treat yourself with dignity, that when you go home you treat the cashier at CVS with dignity, that you treat the person that is making you crazy at work with dignity, that you treat the person who votes differently than you do with dignity, and that A big piece of what drove me to do this was, and also the Dignity pamphlet. The Dignity pamphlet came out of the Russian invasion of Ukraine, and my despair and feeling of helplessness around what to do. And I can get into that story too, but I really realized that, like, in a country, I studied autocracy, so in a country where you have an autocratic regime, we could never do business the way we do. As I try to remind our staff members, there's no pride parades in Moscow. Like, a woman got arrested a year ago this month for wearing rainbow earrings walking through Red Square. Like, this is not a joke. And I've been studying this my whole life. I haven't lived through it. But, I think people here, it's just like, yeah, whatever the fuck, it'll work out. Don't worry about it. And I think that's not how it works. And so this was really an attempt to say, like, it starts with me. One of the big things that DeVoe didn't have when he started, but we had shortly after, is what we call our training compact, which anybody who works in the organization will know that Maggie Bayless from Zing Train rolled out in 1994. And basically it says that the trainer takes total responsibility for the effectiveness of the trainee's training, and simultaneously the trainee takes total responsibility for the effectiveness of the training. And as I started to work with it, then I was reading this book, Corporate Mystic, which taught me that responsibility goes up in multiples of 100%. And at first I was like, no fucking way. I took algebra. But then I realized it's true. And then when I extrapolated from that, and then I was like, oh my God, I am 100% responsible for this entire country. I'm responsible for what's going on in Iran. I'm responsible for people going hungry. I'm responsible for inequities in voting rights systems. I'm responsible for the Supreme Court decision. And I don't mean it's my fault, but I'm responsible for it. And then when I started to shift to be, we're all responsible for all of it, then it's a whole nother thing, because it's not like sitting in the stands at the Bears game going, man, I can't believe he dropped that ball. It's a big shift. So that's really the call to action is dignity, and that it goes down to treating ourselves, your child, your grandchild, your parent, somebody you don't know, your neighbor, et cetera, and I can get into the 6 elements later.
That brings me to wanting to kick this back to the audience and make this a democratic process. So what I'd like to have you do, and this is a tradition of Leaders Connect, I've already been through this before, is find a couple people you don't know. I don't want you to hang out with your familiar people, although for Dave Whitinger that's impossible because he knows everybody here. But talk over what Arya said, and see if you can come up with a brief question for him. And we'll do some rapid fire questions in a few minutes. So take like 3 or 4 minutes here. We're not to introduce yourselves, and then just talk about what you're hearing and what this evokes for you, and maybe what question you might have for Ari. Oh, come on, Baldoni. This is a brother of ours, John Baldoni. He graduated high school just after me.
10 years after you, Rob. Anyway, thank you for being here. How do we become democracy whisperers? That's a phrase I borrowed from a book from Adam Grant, when he talked about a physician in Montreal who would meet with patients who did not want their children to be vaccinated. So how do we apply that concept to having a dialogue with people with whom we are opposed? Whisperers, per se.
That's such a good question, John. I think I'm going to have you answer it, but...
Well, John, I don't have an easy answer. I mean, I don't have any tattoos, but if I were going to get two right now, one would be the Richard Rohr. I don't know if people know Richard Rohr, but the best criticism of the bad is the practice of the better. And then the other one is from Wendell Berry that says the leaders will have to be led. So you can't make any. I mean, I wrote this.
Could you repeat those?
Yeah, the first one's from Richard Rohr, and it says the best criticism of the bad is the practice of the better. And the other one is from Wendell Berry, and it says the leaders will have to be led. And so I believe both of those are true. I wrote a giant book on beliefs, which you know. One of the many things I learned from doing that is you can't make anybody change their beliefs, which we know. And the harder you try to make them change their beliefs, the lower the odds they'll change them. So I have a running list of what makes people change their beliefs, but there's no guarantee it'll happen. I focus mostly on what we do. And part of, like, one of my many, many big realizations in here is that because I had been thinking about democracy as this political activity that happened half a country away, I missed the obvious, which is we're already running a democratic organization. We don't vote, but as I remind people, they vote in Russia every couple of years. The voting is not what makes democracy. It's one tool, one systemic tool that may help you get to some democratic construct. But I started to reflect, and you know, there's I don't know, Nathan, are you still here somewhere? Nathan Bostry was here, and Lisa's here, and Carrie's here, and Arash is here. They're welcome to chime in too because they live this every day. But you know, it's just all this stuff that we do. All our meetings are open. We're open book management. Everybody gets to see the numbers. We train them in it. We have 320 people that own a share in the business. We have a perpetual purpose trust so that we're not selling the business. It's staying here in town, basically me and Paul gifting it to itself so it can never be sold. We have a bottom line change process that was not there when DeVoe was there, but that, you know, whatever, if RS wants to change the 2032 vision, he may not be the decider, but doesn't mean he can't introduce the proposal. And, you know, so that we use consensus at the partner level. Lisa just sat through the meeting with me yesterday where I proposed something and I didn't get what I wanted. And you know what? It's frustrating. I just wrote an essay on frustration last week. It is frustrating. It would be stupid to say it's not. But that's what part of what democratic practice is, because in an autocratic setting, it would just be me going, okay, fuck all y'all, we're doing it anyway. And so, you know, all of these things that I started to really, you know, dealing with people in a non-hierarchical way, where we treat people from day one. Nobody's better, nobody's worse. You have operational hierarchy, of course. Somebody runs the line, somebody is the manager, but it doesn't make the manager a better human than the person you just fired. And so all of these things I realized are going on. So part of, you know, the answer to John's question, I mean, is just like, I just want people to understand, like, if they want Zingermans, it won't happen in an autocratic ecosystem. Like, you can't have both. And so, and I think too is that when you get it away from the politics, like, nobody goes, dignity sucks. So I think it's just practice. And I call my own shit, and I mean, when my legs aren't all screwed up, you know, most of you know me, I was pouring water at the Roadhouse every night. And I'm tell a true story, and Lisa's heard this before. And I was in the fireplace room, which is the one on the far right when you come in, and I'm pouring water. It's a pretty busy Friday night, and you know, we're in Ann Arbor, so we're sort of in our bubble, as most of you are as aware as I am. And I turn the corner and I look, and there's a young man wearing a Trump hat, MAGA hat, and I'm like, you know, not like bad, but I was just like, I might have seen 4 MAGA hats other than on TV, and you know, well, I mean, you know, look where I live. Like, I live in Ann Arbor, you know, I see him on the news, but that's about it. You know, and then I'm like, you know what? He's just another nice human being. Treat him like everybody else. And so I, you know, poured their water, asked if they needed anything, where were they from. They'd driven up from Tecumseh or something, first time there. They were loving it. It was awesome. You know, can I bring you anything? I brought him a taste of something. On the way out, I sent him home with some pastries. You know what? That's how it changes. Why? Because he's going to get back to Tecumseh and he's going to tell some friend, oh yeah, man, we went to that Zingerman's Roadhouse thing. It was awesome. And they're going to go, oh man, those are, you know, libs, blah, blah, blah. And they're going to go, I don't know, man, they treated us great and the food was awesome. And that's the end of it, you know. So, I don't know. And I think here's one last thing I'll say. I wrote a lot about it in the pamphlet. It's just this idea of frameworks, which we've kind of been practicing with the name organizational recipes, but I like the term frameworks, which I learned from Carol Sanford a couple of years ago. So SOPs, or standard operating procedures, are awesome for certain things. So at mail order, if you come work the holidays and you're packing gift boxes, we're not really interested in how you think the cookie should look in the box. Like, it's going here. The label's always going here. If anybody's flying next week, you're not really interested in the pilot's mother's opinion about flight safety. You know, I'm going in for a procedure on Tuesday at the hospital. I'm not really interested in whether they feel like sanitation is good or not good. Like, I want them to follow the procedure. But many things are terrible for standard operating procedures, and those things require frameworks. And we do a lot of work with frameworks. We probably have, I don't know, 50, 60 of them. So frameworks guide you toward a decision, but it requires you to make the decision so that people are forced to think for themselves. And so, like, there's no right answer as to what do you do in a difficult service situation. Like, even the same customer upset about the exact same thing today could want something totally different next week. And so it really requires us to teach people to think. And so when people have been learning to think, they don't vote for autocrats because they want to think. When people have been trained that there's this mythical boss that has all the answers, and then they either hate them or love them, they keep waiting for the right answer to arrive, and it's not coming.
All right, well, that's great. We got one more? All right.
We got a lot more,
Yeah,
Rob.
okay.
You asked for
Point
questions.
them out here. Call them.
Okay, what do you got? You could just,
Or here, you're
Yeah,
close.
sorry.
No, you good.
Right around you. Just a quick question regarding.
Who are you?
Oh, my name's Grant. I recently moved to the area.
You got two names?
Grant Buer.
Where were you from?
Grew up in Toledo, but left the Midwest for about a decade. So,
Welcome back.
thank you. My question is regarding social media and AI in this era and how that impacts what you're talking about. So, not really a specific question, but those are pretty hot topics right now.
yeah, I am not the expert on either of those. I'm still on artisan intelligence. I think there's not, I mean, you don't need to be an expert to understand that the pace of movement and the algorithms of divisiveness and dissension from social media are making it worse. So in the yellow book, which is up there, the first one, there's an essay called 12 Natural Laws of Business, and one of them is strengths lead to weaknesses. So, you know, when Rob was a kid, when I was a kid, when many of you were kids, there were, 3 news channels, and if you lived around here, you could get WGN. Okay, so the bad news is, it was the same news. Like, within a little bit of a band, you had Dan Rather, Walter Cronkite, or, you know, whatever. Well, now you can have, your great-grandmother could have her own news channel. And she could be talking shit out of nowhere, and she got 2 million followers, and
Is that a
there's
true
no
story, or
there's no
is
qualification.
that
I
your
mean,
grandmother, or is that?
no. So I'm just, it's you know, and Timothy Snyder, who I wrote about in here, whose books are awesome, the historian of Ukraine and Eastern Europe, you know, he says that the loss of local news is one of the biggest contributors to the situation, because people have no idea, and I don't have any idea, but people have no idea, like, they're getting news from a bot in Ivory Coast that's telling them something that happened, and it's just because it's repeated so often. So I don't know. I think human connection still triumphs. And I did, is interesting in the essay on frustration, I threw it in at the end because I hadn't really thought about it, but there was a woman in the Atlantic, New Yorker, wrote a piece about AI and, like, why, you know, what its problems are. And it was about writing, and I wrote this piece about frustration, you know, where I switched my own beliefs from, like, frustration sucks because it's frustrating, to it's actually what creates a lot of the positives come from learning to work around the frustration. So if you're doing your writing with AI, then you have no frustration because you just tell it what to tell you. And so the creativity gets lost, but not an expert.
All right, I'm gonna wrap it up just because of time. You want to take one more, and then
You turned them loose. We got two, at least two.
So you said responsibility goes up in
Stand up,
multiples
please.
of. Oh,
Gotta get it
yeah,
on.
sorry. So you
Hey,
said.
come on, run up. You're close.
No, all right.
You got a name too.
Yeah.
might get discovered if you say your name.
I'm Andrew Bolnick. We're almost out of time now. So you said responsibility goes up in increments of 100% or something to that
Multiples
effect.
of
Multiples of 100%. So how do I explain that to my 11-year-old and make him internalize that? Because I think that's a huge life lesson that most kids just don't get anymore. Or maybe none of us ever got, but
Well, I didn't get it till I was 30-something. But, you know, part of what I believe is that all of the work practices that we use are 100% applicable at home. So I didn't go to business school, but much of the work in business school is teaching people to behave in ways that are antithetical to how they actually want to live their life outside of work. So they got to detox in between. And we're the other way. Like, energy management is energy management. Kindness is kindness. Dignity is dignity. It doesn't matter if it's an 11-year-old or a 111-year-old or the CEO or, you know, it's the same. So, I don't know, go over the training compact. I'm totally responsible for you, and you're totally responsible. Let's talk about what that means. I don't know. I don't have dogs.
It's not easy. All right, I'm gonna wrap it up. Just
He's dying to ask.
okay.
My name is Ramayan Saris. We had a good talk over here, and it was off of the responsibility topic as well. And, you know, one of the things that came up is we realized at some point there was a shift where people stopped thinking of themselves as responsible and started pointing and being, well, he's responsible. And, you know, you could say the grass is greener on the other side, but sometimes we're like, it's his lawn that's the problem. Like, how did that happen, and how do we reverse that?
Well, again, I'm not an expert. John Alexander is an English, British writer who has a very good book called Citizen. So he says that humanity has gone through three stages. So first was the subject stage, you know, which is like the king, the queen. Okay, then the second one is essentially the consumer age, which is what you're talking about. And so, you know, people didn't like the way Kamala Harris laughed. We picked a different brand. No, I'm not joking. People didn't like, you know, they don't like the ad. They don't like the debate. Like, presidents don't make decisions in debates. It doesn't come up. They don't go, okay, Mr. President, you have 33 seconds to decide to bomb Iran. What are you going to do? You know, and at the third stage is citizen stage, and that's where I'm going to suggest that we need to be. And so it's a shift, but you can't just take people who've been raised to blame and wait for hierarchically brilliant leaders who like to be the hierarchically brilliant leader, by the way, and tell them now they're responsible. And so, you know, but when people come work with us and they're 16, they just start learning it like it's normal. And so they take responsibility because they see everybody else around them taking responsibility. Can I just go through the 6 elements of dignity really quick, because I think it's really important. So when Russia invaded Ukraine, I'm a Russian history major, not because I love Tsardom, but because I was interested in all the people who opposed the Tsars. But for whatever reason, when Russia invaded Ukraine, it hit me really hard. I went into despair, which I don't do a lot. I wrote that whole book on self-management. I'm pretty good at getting out of it. But it really knocked me down, you know, and I just felt super helpless, and I didn't know what to do. And I'm not saying that crisis is any worse than the crisis in Gaza or Sudan, or, you know, Yuval Noah Harari, the historian, says there's no hierarchy of emotion, so it's not like one person's pain is more important than the others. But for whatever reason, it hit me hard. And I did finally the only thing history majors really know how to do, start studying Ukrainian history. And I knew a lot about Russian history, but not a lot about Ukrainian history. And so I started to study. And, you know, it turns out all kinds of interesting things, like Russia most likely emerged from Ukraine, not the other way around. Ukraine is much older. Russia has a colonial relationship with Ukraine that parallels the English, French, European relationship with Native Americans. They banned the language, they banned the culture, they took out musicians and shot them so that they couldn't play the traditional music, et cetera, et cetera. They kidnapped children and sent them to schools where they would learn Russian. And so this fight is not some little thing over territory. This has been going on for human identity forever. Anyways, in 1991, Soviet Union fell. Many of you know that, but the Russian-sponsored leader in Ukraine stayed loyal to Moscow. In 2013, in the summer, that Russian-sponsored leader, for whatever reason, decided he was going to sign a deal with the EU, with the European Union, which was going to open Ukraine to the West. Now, for you and me, it doesn't make a lot of difference. Most people sitting in this room, you want to send your high school junior to, Florence for a year abroad, you go for it. Like, you want to you can afford it, you want to take your family to London, you go for it. But in Ukraine, like, you couldn't just pick up and go to London. Like, it was a big deal to be able to get out of the country. So young people, and especially, became super excited about this opportunity. It was going to shift their entire life. Hope went up. In November of 2013, at the last minute, he pulled the plug on the deal and shifted it to go sign with Moscow instead, I'm sure for money. That night, an Afghan-Ukrainian journalist named Mustafa Nayam, who at the time was in his early 30s, so now would be in his early 40s, posted on Facebook, and he said, "Okay, come on, man, who's ready to go out on the Maidan, which is the central square in Kyiv? Who's ready to go on the Maidan and demonstrate?" And then in one of the best lines ever, he added, "Likes don't count." So people went, and the first night was like 2,000 and 3,000, and people were out there, and Kyiv's weather is the same as ours, so it's not like you're in December sitting in San Diego. People were out there every night, night after night, sometimes 2,000, 3,000, sometimes hundreds of thousands demonstrating. In early February, he had the idea that my beloved partner of all these years, Paul, would say is an idea that sounded good but not a sound idea, which was he was so sick of the demonstrations, he thought, all right, I'm going to go send the police in to beat up these young people on the square, and the parents are going to freak out, and they're going to pull their kids off the square, and we'll put an end to this. But it backfired because still can't say without crying, because the parents joined the kids. Within a week, the government fell. It became called the Revolution of Dignity. And when I read that, I was like, that's it. I know what to do. We can make dignity. Putin's not going to take my call. He's not interested in my opinion. But we can make dignity happen every day. And then I just set about how do we make dignity a reality in our world every day. And I landed on 6 things. I don't know that they're the right 6 things, but here they are real quick. There's much more in the pamphlets. But the first is to honor the humanity of every person that we deal with. Everybody is unique. This is anarchism, whatever you want to call it. There's no one like you in the whole world. There's no one like your 11-year-old in the whole world. And that's really awesome. The second is to be authentic, but in parentheses, without acting out. So dumping on people and then saying, I'm just telling you how I feel, is not what I'm talking about. Like, there's ways to say, I'm feeling super anxious about this situation. It makes me want to yell. That's not helpful. I feel like things are failing, whatever. The third is to make sure everybody has a meaningful say. That could be voting, but it doesn't need to be voting. There's a lot of other ways. The fourth is to begin with positive beliefs, which is out of the beliefs book that's over there, which is just to choose to believe the best about everybody. It's not Pollyanna. It doesn't mean you like everybody. It doesn't mean you agree with them. It's just you choose to believe that they're trying the best they can with what they got, even if you radically disagree. The fifth is to help everybody in the group to get to greatness, and greatness has to be within the values construct of our organization for us. It's harder in the country, I know that. And then the sixth, I think, is the hardest, which is that there's some modicum of equity. It's not perfect. As I tell staff when I teach the new staff orientation, which I'm going to do on Sunday, it will not shock them. My pay is higher than theirs. Duh. But if my pay was as much higher than theirs as what they read in the paper, that's nuts. So I just think that if we do those, if everybody commits to doing those 6 things every day with every single person that they deal with, the world would be different. And like I said, and I'll use this to wrap up, is just when I was working on the democracy stuff, I was like, this is democracy. Like, if you have a country, a community, a company where you honor the humanity of every person there, where people can be real and are real with each other without dumping on each other, where everybody has a meaningful say, where you believe the best about the people that you're there with, even while you disagree, that you help everybody get to greatness, whether that means being a stay-at-home parent or a poet or a nuclear physicist, doesn't matter, and that there's some modicum of equity, not that everybody has to have exactly the same thing, but it just doesn't make sense for one to be here and one to be down there. And if we design our systems and our daily practice, we would do it. There you go.
That's amazing, and I think I'm inspired. I know I'm inspired to go home and do some different things, starting with my own relationship with my wife. You know, it just starts at that level. And I do have a 12 and 10-year-old coming to stay with us for a week, so I'll consult with you about behavior management as well as democracy. Ari, I wish you well for your surgery. I hope you find some cause, and you know it's been a drag. I can't imagine. I know I have a bum leg. They don't know what's causing it either. It's been there for 20 years. Gone to a walker, but you know these things are really, really hard to accept. I don't think people realize how hard it is to live with some kind of a situation which is disabling. Many of you have dealt with it, or you had parents deal with it, but it's terrible, and I wish you very well to get there. We'll all send healing love to you